what ended up happening was I did end up going, but only because my husband promised to get a hotel room not far from the restaurant. The thought being that if I was just not having a good time and I needed to leave, that I had an escape plan, that a cab would surely take me those 10 blocks, to the hotel. But the point is, he had to secure a $200 a night hotel room just so that I could go, and it didn't wipe out my fears. It just lessened them just a little bit. So, I mean, this is the level that people have to go to help people with anxiety. The absolute worst experience, though, was when I was in graduate school at UNC Chapel Hill, down in North Carolina. I had just graduated the previous spring from UVA, and I was in a biochemistry program with the goal of getting my PhD. And it started out great. I was taking really challenging, really interesting classes, and the graduate students in my cohort were, people like me, and it was cool to be around that. And I was being a teaching assistant for a biochemistry course for undergraduate nursing students. And of course, the most important part of any kind of scientific graduate program is you're doing research in a lab. And I was working in a lab that studied histone proteins. It was cutting edge, it was great. But as fall transitioned to winter, I found that I was spending more and more time helping my nursing students and less time in the lab, which is where you're supposed to be as a graduate student. And I started to get into a little bit of hot water with some of my professors about how I wasn't fulfilling my responsibilities there. And I sat back and thought, I think this is a real sign. I'm not very good at research. It's not what I enjoy. And I made a decision in December, it didn't take long, that this was not where I wanted to be. And I decided that teaching was where I wanted to go. And so I said, okay, I'm going to leave the program, and I'm going to instead transfer over to the education college and get my master's in education. Great. Well, if life has taught me anything, it's that those best laid plans just often don't work out the way you think they're going to. Something that's kind of unique, in case you don't know, about graduate school in scientific disciplines. It's very different from any other discipline. Graduate students in the sciences do not pay tuition to go to graduate school. In fact, it's the other way around. The university pays you, the graduate student, pays you a stipend. Now, it's not much. I mean, you're basically living at the poverty level, but still, you're not paying tuition, they're paying you. And this financial situation was what became a real problem. UNC had essentially been paying me this stipend for 4 months, and when I spoke to the dean and said, listen, I want to leave the program, he essentially said, well, we want our money back. And we went back and forth, and eventually he said, look, you can leave the program, but we're not going to allow you to leave until May. So you need to finish out the year, you need to continue going to class, you need to continue research, you need to continue being a TA, and this is what you're going to do. Okay, well, imagine, if you will, for a person of my disposition who's an extremely anxious person, this is like the end of the world. Okay, this is the worst possible scenario. Someone has put you in a situation that you don't like, and you can't get out of it. It was a feeling of being absolutely trapped. You learn in psychology about that fight versus flight response. And man, I wanted to fly. I wanted out, okay? But what could I do? I mean, I didn't have a choice. Without facing some sort of legal repercussions, I had to stay. So just imagine, if you will, where I am at this point, okay? I know that I'm going to be leaving the program, and the university is giving me a really hard time about it. So I'm feeling like a complete failure because the university is really, really hammering it home about how disappointed they are. So I felt like a complete failure. And again, a lot of what I'm going to describe to you is what I perceive to be happening. It's not necessarily what was actually reality. But I perceived that I was getting these awful looks from my professors who knew that I was leaving the program. I thought I was getting dirty looks from my fellow students in my cohort. Ultimately, though, the absolute worst was I felt that I had let my family down. You know, I had heard so many times my parents brag to their friends, "Oh, Abby's getting her PhD in biochemistry." You know, they were proud. I was proud. And what would they say now? Oh, she's just a teacher. You know, I couldn't. Clearly, I couldn't hack it as a graduate student. I couldn't hack it as a PhD candidate. So I guess I wasn't as smart as they thought I was. I guess I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, and it was a crushing realization, or what I thought was real. You know, all of these things, these worries, these thoughts are welling up inside me, and it eventually started to exhibit some physical symptoms. I basically stopped eating. I rarely slept. I cried a lot. Okay, and I was living on my own at the time in an apartment in Chapel Hill, and so when you live alone, there's nobody to see you day in and day out. This behavior was left to go unchecked for too long. And I'll never forget the day that everything sort of came to a head. I was in my apartment, I was sitting on the couch, I was watching TV, and I just sort of noticed that my heart was beating just really, really, really fast. And of course, being, you know, scientifically minded, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna measure it. I'm gonna see how fast is fast. And, you know, I'm measuring my pulse, and it was beating at about 175 beats per minute. Okay, just sitting on the couch, watching TV, not exercising, and I thought, okay, that's a little high. And so I thought, okay, I can control this. I can control this. I can get myself to calm down. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna go lie down. I'm gonna try to take a nap. Didn't work. I thought, okay, I'm gonna go for a run. You know, that's exercise. That'll get your heart rate up to about that level anyway. And then maybe when I finish the run, you know, my heart rate will just come down naturally.